like I say, that this time around I had to put some thought process into it. So I knew that going private practice was not going to work for me, not only because am I new to the profession, but yeah, I have enjoyed being in public healthcare, even though it has had its challenges. And I think that's a conversation we don't have about working in public service as young people. There's a lot of gatekeeping. You wouldn't think about it, but there's a lot of gatekeeping that I experienced in my 5 years and 6 months of being in public service, and which was just so mind-blowing, My earliest experience of it was in 2019.
Welcome to the very first episode of Zera Conversations. This is a platform where we seek to empower, to inspire, and to ignite the right conversations in society and in your sphere of influence. I'm very excited about today's guest. This is a very special person. She's a good friend of mine, and this has been like a long time coming, and I'm glad that we finally gotten to this point. My guest today is Cece Goje. She's popularly known as Cece Goje in the social media world. She's a dietitian by profession with experience in public healthcare. She's also a wellness content creator who's admired for her nutrition, yoga, and travel content. Most importantly, she's a faith-based girly who prioritizes and is in touch with her faith as a form of self-care. Welcome, friend.
Thank you so much, friend. I'm so proud of you, firstly, for doing this. It's such a huge thing. And I'm so honored to be your very first guest. And I know that this is going to be a life-changing project for you. And I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you, friend. How many times have we spoken about this?
I know.
So many times. And I'm so glad that I have you as my first guest, as I've always said and intended that it was going to be.
I'm glad. I'm happy for you.
Thank you, friend. So before we start, just so we ease up and relax and shake off the nerves, we're going to do an icebreaker.
Okay.
This is a music edition.
Oh, okay.
So, can you give me 2 songs that speak into your season right now?
Oh, funny enough, I've been in my old school gospel music era. So your Fred Hammond, your William Murphy. And I would say it's Working by William Murphy, especially the part where he goes, I've got a seed in the ground and it's he's blessing it, no more stressing. That's the season that I'm in. I have things in place. I have made, I've put in effort towards some things and I'm just waiting on God to deliver on that. And then the second song would be Someone Like Me by Dr. Dumi. I love the part where he says, I can never thank you more than enough for what you've done for me. I've seen God move for me even in the season of waiting. And all of that has just encouraged me that God is, in line with what I want for myself. So those two songs.
I love that you mentioned seed. It just feels like such a God moment because Zera actually means seed.
Seed,
so perfect. I just love that. And it just speaks into seasons because there's seed time and harvest time. So I guess this time is for you to just sow seed. So what song brings back childhood memories for you? Like a song or songs?
It would have to be... It would have to be, old school R&B, Boys to Men. I used to listen to a lot of Boys to Men. Old school R&B. I mean, there's so many songs. I can't pick one. There's a lot. I'm just that girl. I'm into old school R&B.
Okay.
So whenever I hear an old school R&B song, it takes me back to childhood. Yeah.
And because you're a self-care girl, you work out. What kind of songs do you use music as a form of self-care, just to affirm yourself? Are they is there a song or some songs or artists that you listen to that kind of affirm? I mean, apart from gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are there any artists that you listen to?
Okay. When I'm working out, I'm a piano.
Okay.
I'm a piano. I'm a
Perfect
piano, especially from that era around the pandemic.
Yeah.
That I'm a piano was the one. But when I'm in the mood for some downtime, I like to listen to like some jazz and some slow music, just something mellow, something soft. That's what I play in my house most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay, now we can get into the most serious stuff, so to speak. Okay, so today's topic really, we're just focusing on the journey of like a young person in Eswatini, trying to establish yourself, coming out of school and having this post-graduation dreams and, visions for what you want for your life. And coming into this place where you realize that things are just not as simple, as clear-cut as you imagined. So take me back to like maybe your journey, your background, but more specifically post-grad, like what were some of your hopes and your dreams? What did you want to do post-graduation?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I've never been one of those people who knew exactly what they wanted to do with their life. So even growing up, I did not have a career path in mind. So when I was applying for my undergraduate studies, there was no thought process into what I was going to study. Actually, I just figured that I enjoyed biology in high school, so I might as well go to varsity and do something along those lines. So I did my BSc in human physiology, double majored in biochemistry. So undergrad is done and I have to enter the job market now, and I have to come back home to Eswatini. And you can already imagine what kind of jobs you can do with a BSc in human physiology and biochemistry. But I was fortunate to get a job working in a laboratory because I double majored in biochemistry. I did not last at that job. I lasted only 5 months because I quickly realized that it wasn't the right fit for me. It was routine. It was one and the same thing. I'm somebody who values productivity. I'm somebody who values making a difference. Like then whatever I'm doing,
adding value.
Yeah, it has to add value. So I realized that wasn't a good fit for me professionally. So I made the hasty decision to resign. But it's not a decision that I regret at all. However, after resigning, I had to then now figure out what is it that I wanted to do. So my resignation had nothing to do with working. I was very much happy with wanting to work. It's just that I knew that what I was doing at the time was not fulfilling me in any way. So I spent about 3 years at home still trying to figure out what to do next. And I think that period, that is when I started to face the reality of unemployment, and not just unemployment, but unemployment as a foreign trained student. I got to realize that, we go to South Africa, we study all these things, and then we come back to Eswatini, we start to realize that there are no industries for what we have studied. And I remember during that time, as I was job searching, I would go on the internet and be like, what kind of jobs can somebody with this qualification, my one, do? And then it would be a whole list of jobs. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I am screwed. Because Eswatini doesn't have an industry for any of these jobs. So that experience, it was quite challenging to navigate. And I think it stuck to me to this day that the realities that we face as foreign trained students, they are unimaginable. And the sad part is that it's not just foreign trained young people now, even locally trained students, they are also facing unemployment in the most unimaginable ways. So in short, to answer your question, I did not have any expectations per se, but once I found myself in that situation of looking for employment, I got to realize that Oh, it's quite tough. It's quite tough being a young person in Eswatini, because we don't go to South Africa or anywhere else to train because we want to. We are following our passions, and it would be nice if we could come back home and continue to build on those passions. Yeah.
So how did you transition into becoming now a dietitian? Did you go back to school, or what was that like?
So it's funny. It's funny how that happened. I did mention that I've never been somebody who had a career path in mind. I'm just somebody who focuses on their passions. I always tell myself that if I focus on doing what I'm passionate about, then everything will fall into place. I'm that delusional. So during that period, after I'd quit from my first job, and I tried looking for another job, and then I quickly realized that I wasn't going to find anything, and going back to that same one was not an option for me because I already knew that wasn't working for me. So I was already exploring the idea of going back to school, but I wasn't sure what exactly I was going to feather in. And then I remember this one day, I'm reading a magazine. I can't recall if it was True Love or Bona. I'm reading this magazine. There was a section on career, like they were spotlighting careers in South Africa. Then there was this white dietitian there. And I remember thinking, I know about dietitians. I know about them from movies, from TV, but I think it was just a profession that was far from me as a Black girl, as a Swazi girl. I'd never thought about it. It had never crossed my mind. But I remember reading her profile, and at the end of that section, I just had this conviction that this is what I have to do. I mean, at that time, I was basing it off the fact that I love food. So it felt like, oh, exactly, you can do this. But once I started doing more research, I then got to realize that this is what I'm meant to do. Because when I was looking at the University of Cape Town, where I did my undergraduate, I was looking if they offer dietetics. I realized that they do. But then I was like, okay, but why did I do it from first year? I realized that they don't offer it from first year, only at honors level. And then I was like, oh, because I know that I most likely wouldn't have chosen it from first year if I had known about it, because it wasn't the right time for me to know that this is what I'm meant to do. And then when I was looking at what qualifications I need to get into the honors dietetics program, I realized that it was exactly the BSc degree that I had. That was a requirement to get into the dietetics program. So the pieces of this puzzle just started, coming together during that period, and I remember thinking the past 3 years I've been stressing, I've been doubting this qualification, I've been doubting my decision to study in South Africa, but here I am right now, just realizing that everything has worked together for good, has worked perfectly. So I applied into the dietetics program at UCT, and I went back. I did my honors for 2 years, 1 year coursework. The last year was internship. And during that time, those 2 years, I became proactive about my employment prospects because I was older and wiser now. I knew that I knew that some thought process needed to go into this. So I was quite proactive during my school holidays. I would come back, I would speak to the dietitians who were already in practice. I would go to the Ministry of Health and I would let them know that I'm graduating on this day. What do I need to bring to you guys? What documents? Who do I need to apply to? All those things. So by the time I graduated in 2017, literally when I got back home, I think it was during the middle of the week. The next Monday, I was at the Ministry of Health offices handing in my application. Basically just letting them know that I studied, I'm here, create a post. But of course, government processes, it took a while, I think around 6 months though. So then in June 2018, that's when I started employment as a civil servant, as a clinical dietitian for one of our public health facilities. And that's how I became a dietitian.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack a bit to the period where you were unemployed, because that's also just like such a difficult period. I'm thinking about for me, I graduated 2012 and 2013, I was home. And I think for me, it was also that time where I was just traumatized to be like, things are just not as clear cut. Like you can graduate and not find work for like a whole year, a whole 3-4 years even. A lot of young people face that. What were you doing during that period just to keep yourself like afloat? And just what pushed you? Were you looking for jobs during that time? And what are the things that were kind of keeping you encouraged to keep looking for work? Because I know for me at some point, my dad was just like, because I just done my undergrad. And he was like, it's very clear that you need to continue studying and then you can maybe come back and look for work again. But I agree with you with the sense that when I went back to do my honors, I also was very more intentional, like, and my eyes were opened just to say, the economy is not what we think it is. And the climate in Eswatini is totally different, So during those 3 years where you were trying to find yourself, you were unemployed, what were some of the things that you were doing to like keep you going? Were you volunteering at certain places? Were you, what kind of things were you doing to kind of help you?
Okay. So I think we were on the same timeline, after our first degree, we were on the same timeline. So I graduated 2012 as well. So I started working at that job, I think August of 2013. But then 2014, I was back to being unemployed. I I was actively looking for jobs. Like I would ask my dad for money because I lived in Hlangano. That's where home was at the time. So I'd ask my dad for money to go to Manzini and Babani. And I would have my CV with me and everything. And I would literally go to the places where I felt like, oh, maybe they might have something for me here. Like literally door to door. I did that. But I did also had some short contract work because I had experience in a lab. I remember I did a study, data collection for the WHO, a study that they were doing.
Thank God for those. Sorry to interject, but thank God for those because I think for a lot of us, those are the things that have kept us going. Like much as a short term, but like it just gives you like a sense of purpose. It keeps you going,
So and because you also get to meet other young people who are in the same situation as you. So I did some of that, data collection studies, and most of the time though I prayed. Most of the time I prayed. I think that's what got me going and trusting, because as I mentioned, like I always tell myself that if I follow my passions, then things will fall into place. I will figure things out. And I think one thing about me is that I don't fear moments of knowing, moments of being without, moments of being clueless. I don't fear those. I take them as I take advantage of that. I get closer to God. I ask God to show me exactly what He needs to do, because I tell myself that if I haven't figured it out, then that means I shouldn't be doing anything. I shouldn't be trying anything out, and I should wait on God. And I mentioned that I don't regret hastily leaving that job, because I think I used that moment to train myself from the very early stages of adulthood and employment, that you shouldn't settle. Even if the money is okay, because the money was great for a first job, for an entry-level job, but you shouldn't settle, and you shouldn't let money define you. If you're not doing well mentally, if you're not doing well emotionally and spiritually, then how sure are you that this is the thing you should be doing for the rest of your life, and how sure are you that you will still be a productive and a good person if you stay in a situation that is not serving you well? So,
I think that's a very important lesson. I think I always say this when I share with people that my first experience with quitting a job took some time, but I knew that my mental health was just dwindling. Like every day I'd wake up like in tears, like what am I doing with my life? For me, it was different because the money wasn't great. But also I just didn't feel like it was an empowering environment for me. I wasn't able to use any of my skills, and I think that's a conversation that we'll touch on a bit later on. Just being in an environment where, I mean, you're working, but I'm also not able to like fully use what I can offer in that particular space. And I think it's something that a lot of young people face. Like even the aspect of underemployment, that we just sometimes have to take jobs just because we want to live.
Exactly.
And to tie it into what you said, that it's also not a good thing to like take a job just because maybe it pays you well, but it also doesn't speak to who you are, and like at your core, it doesn't like empower you in a way. So I just wanted to add to that.
Yeah.
So back to now, you're at the ministry, you've handed in, you've gotten your job. How is that transit? Had you always, first of all, did you always intend to work in public health, or did you want to have your own private practice?
I think once I had decided that I want to be a dietitian, and I started dreaming about myself as a dietitian. Like I said, that this time around I had to put some thought process into it. So I knew that going private practice was not going to work for me. You know, not only because am I new to the profession, but private practice requires a lot of support. You know, a lot of financial support, and I did not have that. So I knew that my only option was a stable government job. I had the option of doing community service in South Africa and then just working in South Africa, but because I was a foreign national, it was unlikely that I was going to get placement. But I knew that when I come back to Eswatini, there's something waiting for me, because there are posts to at least 2 hospitals where I could possibly be posted at. So I sort of had no other choice. You know, I had to go into public healthcare, but I did not mind. I thought that it was great. It was a good, job. It was a good entry level experience. It has been, because I've been there for like the past 5 years, and it was a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity, and I was very grateful to God for that. And because I was not doing something that I enjoyed and something that I loved. So I did not tell myself that everything was going to be perfect. I knew that it wasn't work, it's still work. The work environment is still the work environment. But this time around, I had the confidence that I am on a path that I'm sure of, then I'll be able to handle whatever comes my way on this new path. But yeah, I have enjoyed being in public healthcare, even though it has had its challenges. And I think that's a conversation we don't have about working in public service as young people. I have a lot to tell.
Maybe we'll have another episode just on specifically that topic. But maybe just to touch on that, at what points now you're employed, you're working, and now I'm just going into the life of a young person who now has a job that looks promising. For some, it's directly linked to what they studied. For others, it's not linked, but at least it's something that I can do. Now, at what points do you now start to realize that actually maybe this is not what it just I thought it would be, and it's not giving me the satisfaction that I thought it would give me?
Okay. Unfortunately, I realized early on. I said that I started working June of 2018. By 2019, beginning of 2019, I already knew that we are not going to last very long here. What I liked about working in public service is helping people. That aspect I do love. It's one thing that I value. I value helping people, that's why I became a healthcare worker. But since I was foreign trained, I was trained in South Africa, and my internship was in hospitals in South Africa. That adjustment to health facilities in the country was huge. And that was the first sign that I wasn't going to last, because unfortunately our health facilities are severely under-resourced, and this is a job that requires resources. As a clinical dietitian, you are using products, you're using medicinal products. That's what you use in order to to help out your clients, your patients, and if that's not available, then you are basically redundant in your role. So I knew beginning of 2019 that I wasn't going to last long after a case with a client, and I needed to help them with something, but I had no access to the resources, and unfortunately the client passed on. And it stayed with me to this day. It stayed with me, and I was just like, okay, maybe I'm not going to last here, so noticing that this environment was under-resourced, that was the first challenge that I faced. The second one was realizing that there isn't really an industry. There's dietitians, but there's no industry for dietitians. You asked, how did I know if I was going to go into public service or was going to do private? I had no choice. Working for government or being in public service as a dietitian, that's the only job you can have. Or you can go private. But in other countries, you can go into pharmaceuticals, you can go into the food industry, you can do so many things as a dietitian. But realizing that we don't have an industry and a market, I realized just how limiting that was, for my expertise. It was very limiting. And I did try to explore other opportunities. I've been on social media. I did some social media content creation. But then again, it was limiting because you can't take it further than just posting on social media and that's it. So realizing that there's no market, there's no networking opportunities, there's nothing, that was also a challenge. And then the other thing was professional jealousy. There's a lot of gatekeeping. You wouldn't think about it, but there's a lot of gatekeeping that I experienced in my 5 years and 6 months of being in public service, and which was just so mind-blowing, My earliest experience of it was in 2019. Because of the social media work that I was doing, I got to do something with Standard Bank, Eswatini. One of their events, I was invited to one of those. And then on the Monday, it was a weekend event. On the Monday, my boss at the time called me to his office, and I think he was trying his best not to tell me what he wanted to tell me, but he just told me that if you're going to be exploring other things outside of your work, you need to be careful because there might be consequences. So I did not know what he was talking about. I was just like, okay, I guess I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take that into consideration. And then I think a couple of weeks later, I had a call. Somebody called me, and we had an hour-long call. And that person basically told me that I'm privy to some information about you, a conversation that was being had about you. And they were basically talking about how you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, all that you're doing, because there might be consequences for that. And I'm just letting you know because I've been in the same position as you. She was a colleague. I've been in the same position as you before, and it was the same person that made those threats or those statements. So I'm just letting you know. And I was terrified. I'm not gonna lie, I was terrified because I just did not understand what business of theirs that was. I'm new in the profession and I'm just doing my own thing. I have my own goals. I have my own intention. I did not understand how it was.
And how that affects you.
I did not understand, but that's when I started pulling back. That's when I started pulling back from doing anything outside of, my clinical work. But that stayed with me, and that would happen throughout the years. It would happen throughout the years. I would try something, I would explore one opportunity, and then I'd be I'd hear something, or sometimes it would be even that just stop inviting this person for this. I should be the one who's doing this, not them. In 2021 there's an instance where because I would work with some of the public health programs in the country. I would do some trainings, nutrition trainings with them. And then this person stopped me from being invited to those because she, assumed seniority that she should be doing that. But then the problem is she wasn't honoring any of the invites and any of the tasks that were being given. So then this one time, one of the officers from the programs called me, and then they were telling me basically to help them out because they were desperate for somebody to show up to one of their trainings, and this person wasn't picking up their calls and all of that. So I was like, no, sure, I will come through. I think it was going to be the day after the next. In the morning of that day, I'm getting ready to go to the event, and then this officer called me, and she was like, "Oh no, please don't come anymore because that person said that they are now coming through, and we told her that we've already found a replacement, but she was still like, no, I'm coming." So I think that experience was my last straw. It was my final straw, and from that day, that's when I decided I am not doing anything else. What I'm doing now is working on an exit plan, and because I think I realized that I was never going to be anything more than what I was. I'd reached my ceiling, like literally. And the only way for me to grow as a professional, the only way for me to grow as a person would be to explore other opportunities. Yeah. So that was very hard. I think the professional jealousy, I wish I could go into it deeper than that, but it's something that would have derailed me. It's something that would have derailed my career. But I think because I am somebody who trusts in God, and I'm also somebody who's not scared of pivoting. Once I see that something is not working for me, I know there's something else that I can do. I know there's something else I can figure out. So I did not, as much as it was detrimental to my career prospects, I haven't let it stop me. I haven't let it keep me from growing and exploring what I can do as a dietitian.
Wow. I think what's disappointing about what you've just said is that, you know, you can be in a space where you're not fully utilized, like we were talking about, like you've been saying, but then find something that you can do in that time, only to now be discouraged even from doing that, you know. And I think it's so important for people to find that one thing. One of the things that one of my bosses told me, he was like, okay, I know that this is not where you want to end up, you want to grow,
ideally.
but just find something that you can do and focus on just to keep you afloat. And I think what's disappointing about that situation is that you had found something that is giving you a sense of purpose, only for the workplace that is underutilizing you to be the very same place that kind of limits you from doing things beyond that. So it's very disappointing. I think it's something that a lot of people are faced with. But I do think a lot of people are not even aware that there's actually a term for it, like that professional jealousy thing, you know, and it affects a lot of young people in terms of like mental health, you know, in the workplace, just not being able to grow and the constant threats that one can get in the workplace. So that's that's a very disappointing thing.
It is. And I think it's only recently where I also started identifying it as professional jealousy. Because at first I thought it was gatekeeping. Because, you know, professional gatekeeping is also something. At first I thought it was that. I thought it was just, maybe I just don't understand the structure of things. Maybe really there are people who are meant to be doing some things. And as a junior, maybe I'm supposed to take things one step at a time. But then I started to realize that, okay, but how come literally everything I'm trying to do, how come literally everything I'm exploring is a problem? So I don't think it has to do with me maybe overstepping boundaries or anything like that. It's definitely professional jealousy, and which is wild because we are all following our own path. We are all walking our own journey. I wasn't even, you know, meddling in anybody's work or whatsoever opportunities that they had. I was simply doing what I wanted to do and the opportunities that I was being given from my own efforts. So it's tough. It's tough. And if there's anybody else out there that's experiencing this, trust me, I know how demotivating it is. I remember in 2022, I started feeling like I journaled it. I remember writing it down as I feel like my heart has stopped beating for my job, for my career, which was wild because I love being a dietitian and it's a career that I loved. You know, I still love it. But in that moment when I was writing it in my journal, I felt that way. I felt like my heart has stopped beating for this career because I felt hopeless because I kept thinking, what am I going to do? At my full-time job, I'm underutilized. And when I try this, I can't go further with it. And I started doubting that, like, Lord, am I on the wrong path? Have I been wrong about wanting to be a dietitian? Because why is nothing working out? You know, and only to, at the end of the day, it wasn't my fault. It wasn't anything I was doing. It was somebody else that was making things difficult for me. Yeah.
I hope one of the people that I was thinking about when I thought about this episode, I thought about a young person who maybe is sitting at home still looking for work. I thought also about someone who's working and is also feeling underutilized or hasn't found something that is fulfilling. But the other thing I was just thinking about, captains of industry or people who have influence in industries. And I think this is just an important point, just to allow people to be themselves outside of what they do on a day-to-day. Because we understand that, I mean, it goes beyond what the human can control. It's also just the economy. Sometimes you employ people just because they can do the work. Maybe it's not the industry that they studied, but it's very important to also allow people to be human and to be human, and to have, because people have aspirations. So if outside of my work, I have an identity that speaks maybe to my career, can we just not limit those kind of things? Just allow people to grow, you know, within those spaces, because it's just very demotivating. And it just goes, it then affects your day to day. Did you find that it affected how you then interacted with the space? You know, just those kind of limitations. Did it limit also how you work on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think, that's a good one. That's a good point. One thing that whole experience, the professional gatekeeping, the professional jealousy, and the underutilization at my day job, I think one thing that it did was it made me go quiet. Because I think that's something that happens when you're underemployed or underutilized. You develop shame over your job. You don't talk about your job. You feel inferior to other people. Like you will see people on LinkedIn and they're talking about all the things that they're achieving at their jobs. You know, they are taking, short courses and at that, and you just like, even if I took a short course in this thing, how is it gonna help me? You know, it made me go quiet. I developed shame around being a dietitian, and I did mention that I started pulling back. You know that I went quiet on social media. I mean, I'm still quiet on social media to this day. So I just felt inferior. I felt inferior to my peers. I felt inferior. And even though deep down I knew there was nothing to be inferior about, you know, I knew that I was still doing good things. I was still achieving some things. Capable. But because I couldn't be open about it, because I couldn't be proud because of how much I knew was happening in the background, you know. It made me go quiet. So that affected how well I was networking, you know. It affected how well I was, it affected how well I applied myself sometimes. Sometimes I would do simply the bare minimum because I'd be like, I don't have the energy. I would wake up in the morning, I'm just like, another day, another, you know. So it affected how much I applied myself sometimes. It affected how big I could dream. You know, I stopped dreaming. I stopped having any aspirations around being a dietitian because things were just bleak. Things were hopeless. So I would say, those things: the shame, the guilt, the lack of energy, the not dreaming bigger than what you have dreamt already for yourself. So I would mention those things.
I think just because you've touched on it, I also wanted to ask you, when I graduated, because I also studied in SA, I think there's always one of the things that one of my sisters told me when I came back, and I was just like in like a very difficult space. So I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not going, I'm not finding the jobs, you know. And she once said to me, like in the morning, I think I was going to volunteer or my data collection jobs, and she was like, you know, try not to compare yourself to your peers in South Africa, because that's a very different environment to what you are in. So it's very hard also not to do that, because like you're saying, it's not that we don't want people to be posting their things, but it's also a constant reminder, because these are people that you studied with, studied with, and you dreamt with. Like, this is what we're going to do after this. That's why I started the conversation with, what were some of your aspirations? I know for me, it was like, I want to work for the United Nations. I want to do all these cool things, and only to come here and like you to find that there's like non-existent
things
industry.
Are different here.
Yeah. So how did you like kind of navigate even those things? Because you obviously have friends in South Africa who are practicing dietitians. How were you able to like be in the space where you felt like you were not being utilized? But now you have peers who are seemingly doing well. How was that like? What was that like?
Funny, my best friend, one of my best friends, is a dietitian as well. She's South African, so she's basically who I thought I'd be as a dietitian. You know, she's a chief dietitian now of a hospital. Because that's just the opportunities that they have in South Africa, which we don't have at all, you know. And I think being friends with her, because she's a good friend, we are good friends, I think through her, I think being friends with her has helped me maintain the love that I have for the profession, even though I can never be that. I mean, I have made peace with that fact that I can never have a career trajectory like she has. But I think being in connection with her and in contact with her, it has kept that's what has kept my heart ticking and beating for the job, because we talk about it. She still asks me for advice, even though I'm not that experienced in what she is doing. So I think having her in my life is what has helped me stay in love with being a dietitian, and it's what helped me push through, because sometimes she would suggest that, okay, maybe you can try this, maybe you can do this, this is what we're doing in SA, maybe you can do this as well. So I'm very grateful for her in that regard. But when it came to just growing professionally and career-wise as a person, for the longest time, I couldn't be on LinkedIn because I would be jealous of somebody in engineering. It's like, you are not even an engineer. But I guess it was just seeing people, having opportunities, seeing people getting to grow. I think that's what that's what was resonating with me. The fact that people had that, they had those opportunities, and it was hard for me for some time. But you know what I did? Beginning of 2023, I decided I'm going to go back on LinkedIn and I'm going to be intentional about it, because that was around the time when I felt like my heart had stopped beating for the job, and I was shameful over my job, and I did not want to talk about it. So I felt it could help me to intentionally talk about my job. It would help me to make an effort to talk about my job, even though I wasn't feeling all great about it, even though I did not have anything to show, about my job. But I will stay on this app, and I will be intentional about it. And it has helped me. It has helped me so much. Not only did I started feeling confident about myself, I started realizing that the little that I have done means so much, because somebody else could have given up. Somebody else could have just told themselves that I can't do anything else. Let me just sit and settle in my being underemployed.
I have a job after all.
I've got a job. It pays. They could have remained there, but I've started realizing that even the little that I have done, even though I could not go further with any of it, but it means something. It means something. So I had to fight. I had to fight to to stay proud of myself, to stay proud of the profession that I had chosen, to stay proud of the qualification that I have, even though maybe in some moments I did not feel like it. So I had to be very intentional about talking about my job.
Yeah. I love that so much, because I think with me it was the opposite, because as much as I love what you said about like your friend doing the same thing made you like come alive, it kept that flame, burning for your profession. I think for me, outside of just comparison, I think it just over time it just killed my ambitions to even look into that particular field. To a point where sometimes my dad will say things like, oh, have you seen what's happening in Israel, for instance, when we discuss international affairs, and it's like, you're an international relations graduate. What do you think about this? Like, I think I completely switched off that aspect of my life and just thought, for the longest time, I think I didn't even know what I wanted to do, because I just felt like this one thing that I thought would, channel my life just didn't happen, and it just took so long. And it's not like I didn't have moments where I felt like, okay, it's gonna happen. I did a few interviews in some places, but it just wasn't coming together. It just didn't work out. So I think I love what you said about the intention, like, be intentional about it. I so relate with the LinkedIn thing, because for me, my LinkedIn existed, but I never used it because of the shame to be like, what am I even going to post here? Like, I'm working as a receptionist, for instance. What is it that I can share that is even worth people seeing? My friends are like country managers. They're working in, they're doing amazing work. They're doing their masters overseas. They're just doing the things that we all thought we were going to do. So I think for me, it was the opposite. It just made me shut down completely that aspect of my life.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. But I love what you're saying, friend, about being intentional, about not allowing those things to kill your joy or your flame about that thing that you studied, because it's your passion. It's something that you must not allow to be killed by circumstances. But I do think some people, when they find, like I said earlier, that when people maybe find a job that's well paying, like you had said, I think a lot of people just become jaded and they just stay in that space because it's safe. I think for you, I remember this other time I was applying for a job in government at Foreign Affairs. And mom was like, if you get that job, like now you're like set for life. Because I think a lot of parents, once you work for government,
and
like,
they mean well.
you're set. Like you don't even have to look for work. You have a job for life. And I was like, no, like that's not what I want to do. But like, there is that temptation of just being comfortable and safe, So I want us to talk a little bit about your content creation. Did that come also as I know that at some point you felt like you don't want to pursue that, but were those things that you used as like vices or like outlets to like help you cope, and maybe you can go into some of the things that you did to cope in that season, just to keep you afloat, the things that gave you joy during that period.
I definitely used social media as an outlet, which is funny because I only started with content creation once I became a dietitian. I was not into it prior to that. But once I started, I found that I enjoyed it. I enjoyed sharing my nutrition lifestyle, my wellness, my travel content. I still do. I still do enjoy sharing it on social media. And I like that. Also because it also had the element of I'm helping people. I'm not just showing off my life. I'm also providing information and, sparking conversations and thoughts. So, social media definitely was an outlet. It's so unfortunate that I had to pull back from that because it got overwhelming. It got overwhelming because of everything else that was going on in the background. Because the more that I was on social media, the more that I got opportunities that I could not take up. And, the more I got invitations to things that I could not honor, So it just, I started dreading being on social media, even though I enjoyed it. I started dreading it because it felt like it felt like a dream I couldn't really have.
Yeah.
It felt like an opportunity I couldn't fully tap into, because I knew that I'm enjoying it. I saw that it's working. I saw that people love what I'm doing. But that had the opposite effect, though, because it made me feel like, oh God, I can't do more than I can do. I can't give more than I can give into this thing. And it is now discouraging me. It's discouraging me, but I still enjoyed being on social media. And I tried different medium as well, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. That was still just me trying to keep the ball rolling. It was still just me trying to keep my heart beating. But that's social. But yeah, social media. That's one way that I tried to cope with things, and also being very intentional with my self-care journey. I think working in government definitely turned me into a self-care person. So being quite intentional with self-care practices, whether that's taking myself out for a little lunch, whether that's staycations, just traveling somewhere, whether that's praying, then yoga. I got into yoga a lot during my time in public service. So all of those things, that's what kept me going, and I think I was on the right track with that. I was on the right track with that because, I survived. I survived. Yeah.
I love that. People don't know this, but that's how we actually became friends. I just kept seeing your content on self-care. And I think you're one person who actually introduced me to even that concept. I don't even think just like taking care of yourself and romanticizing your own life, it really just makes this journey like easier, because you find those little pockets of joy, in your life, although I think something is to be said also about just also not being in the industry that you love can also limit you even from exploring hobbies that you would even that you'd even want to explore. But I think a lot of people, especially those who know you from social media, know you from your work or from the things that you post around like self-care and like just romanticizing your life and all those things. So I think those are things that people can maybe glean or take from this conversation, that there are small things that you can do during that time just to keep you going, which kind of leads me to my next question. For a young person who's watching this, maybe they're underemployed, they're working a job that they don't love, or a person who's like at home still trying to figure out, maybe recently graduated and they're still trying to like figure out themselves, what advice would you give them? And I know that we're not on the other side of this,
not yet,
but this is more like we're in the journey. We've learned some things that are like worth sharing. What kind of things would you share with that person?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing, the main thing that I can share with them is that do not doubt yourself, because I'm sure in this situation, I'm not sure how long you've been in this situation. You've most likely started doubting yourself. You're insecure about your passions, the qualification, the ideas and dreams that you have in mind. But main thing, do not doubt yourself. You chose that qualification for a reason. You just still need to figure things out. You haven't figured them out yet, but do not doubt yourself. And then I would say that if you are in a profession or you're looking to get into a career that is underrepresented, I think me and you are in that space. I would say that explore opportunities outside of the main thing that you want to do, because that's what I did. I was a clinical dietitian, but there wasn't much to do in that space. But I explored other things, even though I could not go bigger with them and do more with them, but I still explored those things. And what they did for me was basically introduced me into a very wide network. I've been in media, I've done radio programs, I've been on TV, I've worked with private clinics, and it has introduced me to all these people, and you never know what else you could find, through that network. So I would say do explore other opportunities outside of what the main thing that you want, even if you can't go further with them and you can't go big with them. Then the other thing would be to build what I call, like a professional portfolio. Like, it doesn't have to do with work, doesn't have to be formal employment. I'll make an example: yoga. That's a hobby. It's a hobby, but I speak about it in interviews. I recently applied for opportunities, and I included the fact that I do yoga, and you can package your hobbies to speak for your professional self as well, because if you're going to be taking part in self-care practices, that means you're somebody who's interested in building resilience. You are somebody who knows how to to enforce a work-life balance, things like that. So I would say everything that you're doing in this period, do not look down upon it. Do not think it's a small thing. Find a way to package everything you are able to do in this moment into a very strong story you can tell about yourself, a strong profile. One thing that this period of my life, the past 5 years, have taught me is that sometimes we think careers have to be these grand things that we're doing. Things on our CVs have to be these grand opportunities. But it has taught me that every little thing that I have done, has made me who I am. And you also need to remember that you are still in the early stages of your career journey. It's just the first 2 years, the first 5 years. You are regarded as a young professional. So you don't have to be in management. You don't have to be. If you are, great, but you don't have to be in management at this point of your journey. So don't take lightly all of the opportunities that you can do. And I know that for some people, they may not have the privileges that some of us have. I mean, I do know that I have some privileges that I've been able to take advantage of. Some people do have to take on jobs because they have to survive. They have to help out at home. I would say just keep the end goal in mind. Whatever decisions you're making with that, as you are taking up that opportunity, do remember that you still want more for yourself. You are still working towards more for yourself. So still be intentional, even at that opportunity. Still be intentional about wanting more for yourself.
So many gems that you've shared there, and I think a lot of it also just speaks to me. But the key thing that I also just want to emphasize is that thing about packaging your experiences and like your professional portfolio. I think it's something that a lot of us don't realize until you actually sit. I think it's one time when we were doing some of your applications, and I realized that when you actually sit and document the things that you've done as a person, you realize that actually my journey is not as useless as I think it is, just because I haven't reached the milestones that I thought I would reach. But every little thing matters, and realizing that on its own is a story. The fact that you're at home right now looking for work and you're realizing and seeing so many things, it's a story that's worth telling. It's an experience that someone can learn from, just like we're doing right now. So everything matters. It's something that I always say, that God doesn't waste an experience.
True.
Like everything matters. The job that you didn't like for you when you worked that 5 months at your first job gave you the confidence to realize that, oh, actually, if I'm unhappy or if I don't see progress beyond this, I can actually just move out of that place, So everything matters. And thank you so much for sharing that. Well, for some people who follow you on the socials, have seen you speak a little bit about a career break, which is like such a bold thing. It's such a bold thing. And it feels like such a new concept, because you're not the only person that I know who has done that. Can you share with us a little bit about your career break? I mean, through your journey, we can kind of pick up some of the things that have inspired it. But how you got to a point where you just felt like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And what are your aspirations, really, just as far as you're comfortable in sharing with us?
Okay, yes, I am on a career break. I've been on one for 3 months, the best months of my life. I've really just been at home living my best life. But how I got to that, I can't say that I've always thought about it. Like, I can't say it was something that I had planned. I did mention that as early as 2019, in my in my career as a clinical dietitian. I knew I wasn't going to be at the job for long. But at the time, I told myself that I'm going to give myself 5 years at this job. Then after 5 years, we're going to explore something else. But as the years went on, I realized that I unfortunately wasn't going to be able to explore anything in public healthcare, So I had to look for something else. So I decided, let me take a career break and work on figuring that out, on figuring out what I'm going to do. After 5 years of being a young professional, I'm about to enter mid-level, my mid-level career journey. So I took the career break just to facilitate that, to facilitate that transition into my mid-level career break. And it was necessary for me to take a literal break because I could have facilitated it while I was still working, but it was necessary because my mental health was at stake. I felt like I needed to attend to my mental and my emotional health for professional development so that I could go into this next stage of my life with all the clarity in the world, like just show what it is that I needed to do. I also wanted to explore opportunities that will allow me to consolidate the experience that I've been talking about. That I did do some amazing things in the 5 years, even though it didn't take me where I wanted it to take me, but I did some amazing things. So I wanted to use this career break just to figure out how I can consolidate all of those experiences and the networks that I've built, the connections, and see where that's taking me. So I have things in motion. I talked about one of my favorite songs being I've Got a Seed in the Ground. So I have things in motion which I'm hoping that they're going to work out well. But one thing that I did not expect that I was going to do was go into consultancy because I thought I was just going to take a full 6 months break, just chilling at home, doing absolutely nothing. But I think God placed it in my heart that, you know what, you can still do something. You can still do this. So I will be, from this March, I will be opening my nutrition consultancy. And I am focusing my services. I'm focusing on the two things which were a huge challenge for me when I was in government service. So the lack of resources, so I want to increase access to nutritional products. The one thing that was a big struggle for me in public healthcare. So I want to increase access to nutritional supplements because people really need them. They need them. And then number 2, I want to do a lot of education around cancer and nutrition, So I've been taking courses on nutrition research and cancer. So I want to address the main things that were challenging for me that made my career as a clinical dietitian not so great. I want to address that. And then the third thing, I'm going to have a job shadowing program because when I was in government, I used to have a lot of nutrition students write to me asking if they can come along and see what exactly being a dietitian is. So I'm also going to have the program. I have a couple of students of graduates actually at the moment. And with them, I think I am being the role model or the leader that I did not have. I am being the person who won't gatekeep anything. I am being the person who won't be jealous of what they can do. And I've been looking at their qualifications and just realizing just how valuable these children could be if our public health system made room for them. So I'm being the thing that I did not have, for these students. So again, that speaks to what we're saying, that everything that you do in that season of your life, even though it seems like you're struggling and you can't figure things out, everything that you're doing, it means something. It will mean something later on in life. And I think for me with this nutrition consultancy, that's what I'm doing. I'm just consolidating everything that I've been through the past over 5 years.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think really the emphasis is really everything matters. And where some people failed us, let us be the people not to fail other people. And I wish you all the best, friend, with
Thank you so much.
new journey, with your career break. Thank you so much for honoring this invitation and also just giving us trusting us with your journey and your story. I hope that it reaches the people that it needs to reach.
We spoke about it.
I hope it reaches the people that it needs to reach, and it actually just makes a positive impact.
No, I'm happy to have done this, and if anybody doesn't take anything else, they should just take Logwagotse we need to have these conversations.
Yeah.
We have to have these conversations. Sometimes we also just think the things we go through and the things we do are just our stories. They're things for us, and we shouldn't talk about them. But you will have somebody like you, friend, who'll be like, friend, can you come on a podcast and can you talk about your journey? And then it's only then that you realize that, you know what, the things that I've been through could help somebody else. And maybe there can be a conversation we are having. So thank you so much for identifying me as your first guest. And I'm so happy to have done this.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me on the first episode of Zera Conversations. I hope you enjoyed this episode and you'll join us for the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.